When fear and anxiety tempt us to forget our Christian identity, God's power, and the hope of heaven, it's time to turn off the news and open the pages of church history. I sat back on the couch, mindlessly scrolling through news headlines on my phone. Articles about the upcoming election, global conflicts, and natural disasters spun me into a whirlwind of anxiety. How could the church remain strong in such a chaotic, corrupt, and seemingly hopeless world? My children interrupted my reading with a stack of books and pleading eyes. We had just borrowed a few books about the Reformation and its reformers from the library. I put my phone aside, and my children climbed onto the couch beside me. Opening the first page, I began to read about Martin Luther. In a world filled with political and religious tensions, Christ helped him stand up for the truth and endure persecution. I read about Queen Jean of Navarre, who bravely used her influence to spread the gospel, despite her family's opposition. I read about William Tyndale, who sacrificed his life to bring the Bible to the people in English. The more I read, the more my fear and anxiety were replaced with hope and courage. I've always enjoyed learning about church history and reading biographies of faith heroes. Stories of the faith of those who came before us can empower our own faith today and strengthen our hope for the future. While our generation may be facing different challenges, believers in every age and culture have fought against sin, defended the truth, and endured persecution. Even in these times of tension and turmoil, we can find peace, trust, and hope in Christ by reflecting on God's faithfulness in upholding His people throughout church history. When I watch journalists analyze politics and global crises, it's easy to think that world leaders hold the power to decide the future of nations and even the church. But Proverbs 21:1 reminds us, "The king's heart is like a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. He directs it wherever He pleases." We see God's supreme authority over kings demonstrated throughout both biblical and church history, especially in how He used secular leaders to bring about His blessings and judgments. God allowed German nobility, even those with selfish motives, to protect Luther and spread his teachings. God used King Henry VIII's sinful desire for divorce to separate England from Roman Catholicism, opening the door for the Reformation to spread. When political leaders oppressed those in the Reformation movement, God acted through their martyrdom and defended their pursuit of the truth, leaving a significant impact on the church today. Even those who lead in evil ways cannot thwart God's providential plan for the growth of His church. We can rest assured that even when evil reigns, God is still on His throne, working all things for our good and His glory. The Reformers weren't always right. After escaping persecution, Lutheran believers began persecuting the Anabaptists for their stance on religious freedom. When Tyndale's Bible translation was finally accepted, only merchants and nobles were allowed to read it. Some reformers used the power they gained to act violently toward the Roman Catholic Church. We can learn from both the faithfulness and mistakes of the believers who came before us. What if the Lutherans had embraced the Anabaptists' emphasis on discipleship? What if the Anabaptists had learned from the courage of the Lutherans in the secular world? How might they have better demonstrated Christ's love if they had worked together? Paul urged the Corinthian church to prioritize their identity in Christ over following a leader, saying that there be no divisions among you, but that you be perfectly united in mind and thought. 1 Corinthians 1:10. We can find strength in today's culture by uniting with fellow believers who share a common faith in Christ, in biblical truth, even if we disagree on certain issues. Christian parents often worry, what kind of world will our children live in? Many parents are concerned about the trends in today's culture and fear that future generations will face hardships and persecution they cannot endure. Although recent studies show a decline in church attendance and religious affiliation in the U.S., a broader view of church history encouraged believers that the gates of hell will not overcome the church. Matthew 16:18. He empowered the Anabaptists to emphasize the importance of personal commitment to Christ. He sustained the Reformers as they resisted culture, and he will continue to uphold his people until he calls us home to glory. The Western world may become increasingly hostile to Christianity, but we need not fear, for Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. Hebrews 13:8. The Reformation was not only a turning point in the history of the church, but in the world as well. 500 years later, believers may look back on the past decades as a similar turning point for the Western world and the church. But in doing so, they will see the hand of God protecting and purifying his people as he reigns over leaders and cultures. By reflecting on the rich history of the church, we gain trust, security, and hope for today and the future. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, Hebrews 12:1 from every generation and culture reminds us of God's sovereignty, our citizenship in heaven, and our unchanging future in him. When fear and anxiety tempt us to forget our Christian identity, God's power, and the hope of heaven, let us turn off the news and open the pages of church history. And we can run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. Hebrews 12:1-2.